Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing another One Piece video. We are doing a review or a discussion or however you want to look at it of Water 7 Arc. Now before we get into this one, just at the very beginning, I want to say that something I didn't mention in my last review was that I'm really glad that the Straw Hat Pirates didn't get their ship mechanic or their shipwright or their carpenter or whatever it is. I'm really glad that they didn't get their mechanic through the Davy Back Jones game. Because as we've seen, through all the other stories, each one of the characters gets like such a fleshed out story before we get them, and they get such a fleshed out backstory as like their sad backstory and what they're planning on achieving. And we didn't really get any of that from any of the people in the Davy Back games, so I just wanted to say that I'm really glad that they didn't do that. They didn't give us the shipwright through those means. Now, it hasn't been confirmed yet that Frankie is going to be the new ship's mechanic, but I would be very sincerely surprised if Frankie was not the new mechanic, considering how much we've learnt about his like sad backstory with his like boss and mentor and father figure dying, seemingly because he left all of his like little Frankie battle boats out. And we also get his like big global plan saying that he wants to build the best boat in the world that could sail all around the world. So just knowing like the general way that people have joined the Straw Hat Pirate crew, I would be very thoroughly surprised if it wasn't Frankie. And just on another note before we get into this review, thank you to everyone that joined me on my first live stream in like well over a year. I was really just trying to like figure things out as I was doing it. It lasted accidentally for 3 hours. I was really only trying to go for 30 minutes, but it lasted much longer than that because people were asking such great questions. I will hopefully try to do another live stream like next week, maybe, if I could do it on a weekly basis, depending on how like my 9-to-5 job goes. I would really like to do that. So just, thank you. It is on my channel in case you missed it and want to go and watch it. And while I am planning on doing another live stream next week, that brings me on to my next point. I might not do a One Piece video next week. And the reason I want to do that is because I was reading One Piece and the Wheel of Time at the same time. I have not put out a Wheel of Time video, like book review, in like well over 2 months. I think it's been maybe 3 months since my last Wheel of Time book review. So they've been waiting a long time for the book reviews, and I've just been putting all of my time and effort and energy into One Piece. So I think that I will focus this next coming week on just reading the Wheel of Time. So I'm sorry, I think I will skip next week's One Piece video. And lastly, I opened up a Patreon. On the live stream, somebody asked me, like, why don't you have a Patreon? Have you thought about opening up a Patreon? And my response was something along the lines of, I have thought about it, but I don't really have anything to offer anyone. So I went onto all the, like, other big YouTubers' channels, and I, like, looked at all the things that they offered. And so I took all the best things that they offer. They actually really don't offer very much. And I put it onto my channel. Or I put it onto my Patreon, and I'll link it down below. Check it out. I put some funny One Piece related stuff in it, so even if you just want to look at it to have a laugh, just check it out. Anyway, let's get straight into this review after, 2 minutes of just talking nonsense. Let's get straight into this review. I want to talk about Kokoro, I believe her name was, the old drunken grandma that we saw at the very beginning. Right. Now, I knew that there was something suspicious with her from the very start because, like, she just has such a suspicious face with, like, that angular face, and you always see her from the front, which makes it look even more suspicious and scary. And we see that she is, like, drinking. She's got, like, a heavy drinking issue. Before we really find out too much about her, we see her at the initial station, and then we see her a little later on after we've been introduced to Frankie, and he's had that fight with Luffy. And we see her drinking again in the bar and talking to Frankie, and we're like, what is going on with this woman? They haven't really given us much information about her, but I'm definitely very suspicious about her. There's definitely something more. And then in Frankie's flashback, we find out that she is actually the attractive secretary, which was her official description as like attractive or beautiful secretary of the Tom's Builders, I believe that they were called. Now, the thing that I found really interesting about her is in that flashback, you never see her drinking until the moment that Tom has been, like, executed, until the moment that Tom is taken away, sorry. And it's really interesting that that is the first time we see her drink, when, like, the moment after Tom has been taken away on the train and Frankie gets hit by the train, and that's the first time we see her pick up the bottle and start drinking because, like, you know, she thinks that Tom is taken away to the prison island, which he has been, and she thinks that Frankie is dead, and to deal with it, she picks up the bottle and starts drinking and has this, like, massive drinking issue for the rest of her life, which is really interesting. And also a little sad. But it was nice to know that she did find out that Frankie was still alive. Next, let's talk about Usopp's big moment, right? The big moment with, like, Usopp and Luffy and the boat and the showdown and all that Batman stuff that we got to see. So this was a pretty crazy story for Usopp. We got to see him, like, lose the 200 million berries and, you know, get, like, beaten up for it. And then he goes to the clubhouse and he's like, give me back that money. We need that money for our boat. And he gets, like, beaten up again. And then Luffy and the others go and, like, beat up Frankie and all of his family, or just the family. They don't beat up Frankie at that point. And then Usopp ends up back at the boat where he gets taken care of by Chopper. And he wakes up, and the first thing that he is told is, like, from Luffy saying, I have decided that we are leaving Mary behind and we are getting a new boat. And just in the way that Luffy says it in that moment, I really understand why Usopp took it so badly. Also, I mean, like, it's part of Usopp's character to be so attached to the Going Merry and take it badly at that point. But even just the way that Luffy said it, right? Like, when he said it, he could have said something along the lines of, you know, hey, Usopp, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but there's no way that we can repair the Going Merry. It's, like, on its last legs. It's about to fall. It's about to sink. It won't even make it to the next island. But instead he makes it seem like it was just, like, his selfish decision to, like, leave the Merry behind and to just, like, go get a new ship because they got all of this money, which I think was a massive part of why Usopp had that, like, reaction that he did. But apparently, if you watch it in the anime, I was told this during the live stream, that apparently this scene plays out a lot differently in the anime than it did on the manga that I read. So that might be something worth looking into as well. Right, okay, so let's get into the Usopp and Luffy fight. That whole thing was awesome. But, unpopular opinion, I'm saying that either, like, Luffy should have thrown the match, or Usopp should have, like, won the match. And again, this was brought up on the live stream, and some people had some, like, really great points in regards to this, or in counter to this. And I think the fact that I like Usopp so much really did taint my view of that. But I honestly think that Usopp should have won that fight because Luffy and the crew was already leaving the Merry, right? Like, they had that fight because the captain or the ship belongs to the captain. So Usopp challenged Luffy for the right to the ship. So because they were already leaving it and it was in this bad state and they were just like, well, there's nothing we can do with it, we have to get rid of it, it would have made a lot of sense to me if either Luffy lost the jewel or if he threw it. That way Usopp could earn that ship right. But a lot of people brought up some good points in regards to, one, it would have been unrealistic for somebody that could beat up Crocodile and, like, God and Skypiea to lose in a fight against Usopp. And two, so much of this story was about Usopp's pride, and it wouldn't have, like, helped Usopp's pride at all if Luffy threw that match. And I like that take because we do see at one point during the battle when Usopp's doing all of his, like, crazy Batman tools and whatever, after he shoots his flame ball into the gas and it explodes Luffy, we see Luffy lying on his back, and Usopp yells out into the smoke, I know that wasn't enough to stop you, so come on, keep fighting, let's go. And in that moment, you could easily perceive it as Luffy is laying there with his eyes open and he's thinking to himself, like, okay, you know, he's had a pretty good run. I could very well just lie here and, like, pretend like he beat me. But then Usopp yells at him and is like, you know, his pride is on the line and he says, I know that wasn't enough to beat you, so get up and let's keep going. As for the Going Merry itself, I gotta tell you what, I was not expecting it to actually be destroyed. Honestly, what I was very much expecting was towards the end of the story, like, you know, maybe the train, like the big tidal wave was coming and the train was gone or whatever, and the crew would have to go back to the Going Merry, and it wasn't their choice to be there, it was like their last resort to get onto the Going Merry. That's what I was expecting, especially when we learnt about like the spirit of the ship, and the ship was like very well looked after, so the spirit wanted to show, you know, that it still supported the crew and was thankful for how much the crew loved them. That we learnt that in Skypiea when we see the silhouette of the human repairing the ship. So when we got all those like lovely heartfelt moments and just how much, like just how attached Usopp was to that ship, I was not expecting at all for, you know, Frankie, first of all, to just start like ripping the ship apart. And when Usopp tries to stop him, Frankie throws him into the water and it's like, look at the bottom of the ship, like it's done for. And you see like all the, you know, whatever it is, it's all cracked up and it's got a big thing on it and it's about to sink. But I still believed that they were going to still use that ship until right at the end where, what do? They like open a gate or something and the water floods out and the Going Merry goes out and it like smashes onto the ground and you like see it like smash and splinter. And that was the moment I was like, oh, okay, I guess they're not taking this ship anymore. And just in regards to all of that, there was this really great line in the story, and it was something like, I think Frankie might have been talking to Usopp. I think it was all around that moment where they'd like captured Usopp and they were trying to use him to bait out the rest of the crew. And I think Frankie says something along the lines of like, what are you planning on doing? And Usopp's like, I'm going to sail back home. Like, I wanted to set out and be a brave high seas warrior. I've made it to the Grand Line. Like, that's more than anyone else has done on my island. Like, that's, you know, cause for celebration enough. Like, I will be a hero to these people because I've been to the Grand Line, because I've seen giants and sea monsters and blah, blah, blah. I really liked that part. And, you know, Frankie really liked that part as well, because in that moment, he starts ripping up the boat and he's like, hey, you know, if you'd just said that you were going out for glory or fame or whatever, I would have just let you die. But because you said that you were trying to get back home, I can't just let you sail out and die. You know, I'm trying to help you get back home by destroying your ship, because there is no other choice. If you try and take this, then that's it, you're dead. Alright, let's talk about all the craziness with Robin, right? Because, like, it was a pretty crazy story with Robin, and I was really, honestly, 100% expecting to have a big Robin story, right? Like I said that in my last review, I was like, oh, in the next Water 7 arc, I'm sure that we're going to get Robin's sad backstory and we're going to get all of that information. But instead, we got all of that information from Frankie's point of view. So, Robin, really interesting, really, really fantastic story that they built around her in this one, where, like, you know, they blackmailed her into getting like that massive military power. The word is escaping my mind right now, but I'm going to call it the Big Kahuna. They blackmailed her into getting like the Big Kahuna, all the like generals and the warships and all of that coming and just like obliterating the Straw Hats. Because in her past, we found out, just like it was very lightly touched on, that her last crew, or like, I think it was the O'Hara Devils, I think it was called, they also had this Big Kahuna battle force called on them, and it just like obliterated everyone on the island, and the only survivor left was Robin. Now, I very much hope that we do get to see Robin's story, because I imagine this O'Hara demon story must be like really awesome. So I'm really looking forward to finding out that. Hopefully we do find it out and it's not just something that's just like subtly hinted at constantly, and it's just one of those things that like just lets people's imagination do the work. But yeah, that whole like, the entire thing was great. Like with we meet all of the shipwrights at the beginning, the like 5 people, and then we find out that like so many of them are part of the world government and they're all double agents, they're all secret undercover agents. And, you know, with the, like, masks, I did not expect it at all. So, like, right at that moment when we get the big reveal and, like, the pigeon flies in and the guy with the bull mask takes off his mask, I honestly did not expect that at all. Especially because we see so many of them guarding the front door. And we see, like, bodies that are dressed like them that get, like, beaten up and left there. But really, it was just, like, people that were beaten up and then dressed by the people that had the masks. And especially the secretary. That was like the biggest twist I saw of all. Like, you know, when they all revealed, I was like, oh wow, you know, all these people. But then like the secretary reveals as well, and I was like, oh wow, the secretary's in on it as well. She seemed so like devoted to him. And we find out that Robin had to frame we found out Robin shot him, Iceberg, on the first night and had to show him her face. That way everyone would know that it was the Straw Hat Pirates that set up this assassination attempt, and then she would go back again and kill him for real. That way she could frame the Straw Hat Pirates for the entire crime. And also she had to turn herself into the world government. And it was so interesting when it was like, you've been running for 20 years, how have you finally been caught? And she's like, I finally have people that I want to protect. Or I finally have people that, like, their lives mean more to me than my own, or something. Or she says something really deep like that, and it's just like, oh wow, that's so crazy that, like, she frames the Straw Hat Pirates to save their life from the big Kahuna battle force, but, like, you know, very much endangers their life in a much more subtler way, or a much smaller way that she knows that they would be able to get out of. Alright, let's talk about the big warship Pluton, right? So in an earlier review, when we first discovered the word Pluton, we learned about the ancient war engines or whatever, ancient weapons, right, that they want to reawaken. And the name Pluton was first mentioned. I was like, okay, right, this makes so much sense. One Piece is set in a post-apocalyptic world after a nuclear war. That's why there's no landmass, and that's why there is so many, like, mutated creatures, mutated islands, and it's why the weather system's so fucked, right? But also Pluton and plutonium sound similar, right? But it turns out that Pluton is actually the name of the warship, right? And I did really like that they didn't make these ancient weapons like nuclear weapons. I still believe that there are nuclear weapons and One Piece is set in a post-apocalyptic world. I still believe that. But I'm glad that they opened up this door to the ancient weapons being things like, you know, a warship, you know, a tank, a submarine, a leash for sea kings or something, right? Like, the fact that the first super weapon that we come across is a warship opens up so much more world building and storytelling that they can tell with anything, right? They can make anything the super weapon. They could make a cannon, right? It's just a ship on a piece of wood that floats, but it's got this massive super weapon cannon on it. And planes, right? I'm sure that there'll be a super weapon that's a plane, right? That just makes sense. Or like a hot air balloon or something. Like, the possibilities that they've opened up for themselves by making this first super weapon a warship and not like something like an actual nuclear weapon or a missile silo or a bomb or whatever. Like, they've just done such a great job with that idea. Alright, let's talk about Frankie, right? We had so much just craziness with Frankie in this episode. Like, from the very beginning, when we first meet him, and he, like, is just the weirdest guy. And then when he, like, calls out Luffy and fights Luffy, and he's breathing fire, and his arm shoots off, and there's, like, a chain attached to it, I'm just like, what? He's eaten the chain fruit? But then he, like, swims as well, and he's like, oh, don't you know? I'm Frankie, I'm a cyborg. And I'm like, yep. Fits perfectly well in One Piece. I get it. I believe it. My disbelief is still suspended. His whole thing was great. I liked him from the very beginning, you know, not so much when he beat up Usopp, but, you know, everything that happened with him, I thought this guy was a great villain. This guy's a great character. I thought the two sisters that he was with was kind of weird. But when he, like, captures Usopp and he's talking with Usopp about the ship, and you get those really great moments with him where he's, like, really humanized and just shown to, like, care about Usopp and what's going on with him. And then on top of that, we get, like, his sad backstory, which does also help to humanize him even more, which in classic One Piece, you know, way was a very fantastic backstory. There's a very good flashback, which, as I've said before, flashbacks are incredibly hard to do and people do hate them. But One Piece continues to nail its flashbacks in both, like, an entertaining fashion and an interest fashion, and adding to the story fashion. And I will say that probably my favorite part of the story, this is going to sound dumb, but my favorite part of the story was when you get to see, like, the government officials have broken into Frankie's lair, and they've smashed through the wall, and they're in the drawing room, or whatever it is, and they pick up the picture, and it's Tom, Iceberg, Frankie, the Frog, and the Kokoro, I believe her name was. And in that moment, you're just like, that's how she fits into the picture. It all just makes so much sense now. In fact, this entire arc had a lot of really great reveals, like a lot of really great plot twists, especially around Robin. There were a lot of really great plot twists with Robin in this one. And I am a big fan of plot twists. One of the big things that they haven't explained yet that I think is really kind of weird that they haven't covered yet, and I was actually really expecting to find the answers to it in this one, is why can Robin read the Pornoglyphs, right? Like, so it says that she was able to read them at the age of 8, right? Why? Was her parents like, archaeologists, just like she's become? Or is this an ingrained ability that people are born with? Because if she is the only person that can read these things, and it is a taught ability, then you would imagine that they would have forced her to teach other people how to do it, or, Gold Roger knew how to read it, so you imagine that he would have taught someone else how to read it as well. So just from that, I'm kind of getting the idea that it might just be a ingrained ability that you're born with. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that kind of thing, whether it's just like something that you can see or you can't see, or if it's something that can be taught. Because if it's something that could be taught, it's kind of weird that only Robin could do it, unless the government went out of their way to find everyone that could read these things and killed them, which is part of my theory of what happened with Gold Roger, in case you don't know. My working theory with Gold Roger is that he read all the Pornoglyphs, found out the secret information of the world. One Piece is actually that secret information, all the information on the Pornoglyphs, all compiled together in One Piece, and he has hidden it somewhere because he knew that it was dangerous for people to have that information and for the government to know where it is, and the government knew that he knew because he brought the information to the government, just like LeBlanc did in the other story before he was hung. And instead of going back on his words, LeBlanc was executed. I think the exact same thing happened with Gold Roger. He brought the truth of the world, the government didn't like it, told him to retract his statement, he said no, government executes him. So One Piece is all the compiled information of all the Pornoglyphs in One Piece. Working theory of Gold Roger and One Piece. And I sped through that because I have said that a couple of times and I don't want people to be like, God damn, would he just stop telling us his theories? Alright, I want to talk about Spadman for a second. I'm sure I'm saying that guy's name wrong and I feel like such an idiot saying it. I want to talk about Spadman for a second, right? When we get him in the flashback and he's just being a jerk and like all that stuff, and then Frankie like smacks him over the face with a plank of wood or something, I think happened. In One Piece, something that doesn't really happen is you don't really see lasting injuries, right? So it was really interesting to see, 20 years later, I think it is. Actually, no, I think it's 12 years later. I think Frankie's flashback was 12 years. Anyway, let's say 10 years later, right? It's really interesting to see Spadman, now the head of the CP9, which was another great plot twist, has like all of these like injuries and he's got like all of these things that have to like hold his face together. That was really interesting considering you don't really see a lot of long-term effects from injuries from people in One Piece. So I actually really liked that. I thought that was a great addition to not only this particular story and the plot twist. I thought that was awesome, but also One Piece as a whole, as a story in general, to show that there are still lasting consequences. This isn't just like all craziness and like disbelief of suspension of disbelief. It is also, things do have long-lasting effects. So I did really like that. And just while we're still on Frankie's backstory, I really enjoyed like the idea of Frankie, like when he gets hit by the boat and everyone thinks he's dead and he lets everyone think he's dead and he ends up on a ghost ship and he's like, well, the first thing I got to do is I've got to get rid of this useless body of mine. And so he presumably works on himself and like builds himself a mechanical body, right? I thought that was actually really well done in how much foreshadowing they put into that moment by showing how great of an inventor he was and how much he'd worked on the battleships and the weapon systems, because he does say that his body is a weapon. So to me, that didn't really feel so out of place. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was not sure if Usopp was going to rejoin the crew or not, right? Because I was like, the thing is, when you're writing a story, right, there is a certain amount of characters that you can write well, right? Like, everyone's different. And the medium that you are telling the story through also has an effect on it, right? But at the end of the day, you can only have a certain amount of people as your main characters and still give them all of the screen time they need, still give them all of the backstory, all of the character progression, all of that they need in order to be good, like, well-written characters. So for me, with Usopp, because as I've mentioned in the past couple of reviews, especially since Sky Island, Skypiea, Usopp has really gone through his character arc of being like the cowardly coward of the group to becoming much more brave. And so for me, if anyone like did have to leave the Straw Hat crew in order to get like one more crew member in, Frankie the shipwright, it would make sense for it to be Usopp. Because he's already gone through his character arc, plus he's got like, you know, he's got a lady waiting for him back home, right? Like, I know that they didn't really like say, you know, the girl didn't say, hey, you know, I'll be waiting for you, or Usopp didn't say, hey, wait for me or anything. But like, it's pretty fairly implied that like Usopp's got a good hometown to go back to. He's got friends, he's got those kids, you know, plus he's got, you know, a lady to go back to. So it makes sense because he's been through his character arc and he's got something waiting for him at home. So I wasn't sure if Usopp was going to rejoin the crew or not until obviously towards the end of this one. You see he like says a lot of things like, you can count on Luffy, you can count on us, you know, you need the captain's permission before you can leave, so you can count on Luffy. And you know, all these things happen that he says, and it's like, okay, so Usopp's obviously turned around and he's going to rejoin the crew now. Which, honestly, I'm pretty happy about, because, like, I personally, like, Usopp would have been a good time for him to leave the story, but I personally wasn't ready for him to leave the story, so I'm glad that I'm pretty sure that he's still sticking around. We'll have to see after the next chapter, after they try and break Frankie out of the prison. Plus, I imagine Tom will still be alive, and they will break Tom out of the prison, maybe. Who knows? And then we get, like, the big ship scene, so, you know, the, the bullet train or whatever, the out-of-control bullet train, shark train, I forget what that one's called. It is zooming along the tracks. You know, we get some really great, like, Zoro moments. I was saying before that I wish we got more Zoro moments where he got to do really cool ninja samurai stuff. We got a few of those. He, like, chops a train in half. He, you know, slices up T-Bone. He does the move and, like, smashes up the big wave that's coming. So that was really great. I'm glad that we got more of those Zoro moments. But also, something interesting that I noticed was when Sanji is fighting the other chef, and he's doing, like, the guy's got, like, his noodles, and he's, like, wrapping Sanji up in the noodles. I was like, oh, wow, you know, Zoro would have come in handy in this part. And then Sanji uses his, like, knives and, like, slices up the noodles. And you see in the panel, I wish that Toei wasn't, you know, banning everyone right now because I'd put the panel up. You see him in the move and he's, like, you know, in, like, a pose like Zoro does. And I'm like, that's kind of funny that, like, Sanji did, like, a Zoro pose with these knives as if they were the samurai swords. And it's just, like, funny with, like, their, like, banter, how they're always, like, butting heads together. And this one ends really interesting as well, right? So this one ends with them all in the train car, and you know, Usopp does the smoke bomb. They grab Robin, they jump into the other train car, and Robin's just like, "No, I don't want to go with you. No, leave me alone. I don't understand what you're doing. Just like leave me alone." And they're like, "But we know why you're doing it. We know why you're doing it." And you know, she's like, I don't care, you don't know everything, I'm dark, I'm a bad person or whatever. And then Usopp says to her, like, towards the end, he's like, I know that you're hiding something else. Like, I know that we think that we know everything, and I know that you are hiding something else, but whatever it is, we don't care. We already forgive you. You know, Luffy's coming to save you. Like, it doesn't matter what you're hiding, it doesn't matter your dark past, whatever it is you think. That means that you cannot be with us, but you will be with us. Luffy will see to it. He's coming. You better watch out. And so at the very end, we've got Robin and Frankie both going to Enos Lobby. They're both going to Enos Lobby, right? So this is going to be a pretty interesting arc in the next one. Just, I have a feeling it's going to be like a massive prison break kind of arc. So that'll be really interesting to watch to see how they build it up. Because I believe it's like 60 chapters long or something in the next arc. So it'll be really interesting to see how they build up the like prison, how they build up everything that's going on. Obviously, they're going to have to make like a big plan, and then everything will go wrong, and then there'll be a big fight, and then they'll probably recover, and then make another plan, and then have another big fight, and Luffy will fight the big bad guy, and I imagine Frankie might punch out that the guy with all the things on his face that he punched out originally in the first bit of his flashback. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I kind of wish I did this in 2 parts because, you know, this was like 50 chapters long. You know, it's hard for me to tell which chapters or which arcs I should do in 1 or 2 parts. I kind of wish I did this one in 2 parts so that way I could have done like right up until the big reveal where everyone pulls off their masks. And then, you know, I could have like really gone into depth into like all of that. And then, you know, in my second part, I could talk about like all the other stuff that happened. I think I might do that with the next arc because I have a feeling that will have a lot of stuff that I will want to get pretty in depth with. Yeah. Also, going forward, I think 50 chapters will be my like number. If something is 50 chapters, I will do it in 2 parts so I can get more in depth because I feel like I should have gone a lot more in depth with this one. But there's just so much to talk about, and I can only create YouTube videos that are so long. Anyways, guys, like I said, you know, check out my Patreon, my brand new Patreon. There's a lot of One Piece themed things in there, so just go there for a laugh if you want. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment down below. I am collecting manga that I should read or anime that I should watch, so if you've got any suggestions, please let me know. Also, let me know what your thoughts are on Attack on Titan, because apparently people either love it or hate it. So please let me know if I should read it / watch it, because I would read it and watch it. And yeah, thanks very much for watching to the end of the video. I honestly really appreciate that. Till we meet again, thank you very much.